Welcome to Creative Conversations. I'm Roger Humphrey. In this episode, I'm pleased to welcome the Folias Duo. Although they are a classical duo, they've forged a career performing their own compositions. Please join us as we talk about that, their most recent tour, and much, much more. Before we get started, please hit the subscribe or follow button. It's an easy thing to do, but it really helps out the channel a lot. Thank you. So anyway, we are welcoming to the show Andrew Bergeron and Carmen Maret, guitarist and flutist, respectively, and they make up the Folias Duo. And I am so glad to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You guys just got off tour, didn't you?
Yeah, yep. We were on a 30-day tour, all on the West Coast. Took a route through Nevada, California, Oregon, Idaho, New Mexico was the big circle.
Boy, I guess. And it looks like I think you missed the bad weather. They're under this massive heat dome now.
It was perfect. It wasn't too cold, it wasn't too hot. It didn't rain the entire trip, even in Oregon, which is amazing. And we beat all the heat, and the fire season was just starting, so it was good. It's a good time to go to the West.
Yeah. How are the crowds? How is your audience size?
It was good. Yeah.
I'm sure everybody loved it. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But so you had good crowds, good audiences?
Yeah, really good audiences. A couple really good ones. We had Newport Beach. There was almost 200 people, which
massive.
is great. Like 100 people feels like amazing. I would say 50 is probably more our going, but like almost 200 is like so many eyeballs for us.
I think, when you're talking about classical music, that the numbers are so different than you are when you're talking about popular music.
Yes.
And, for my money, when I was performing, I don't perform anymore, but when I always liked those smaller audiences, 50 to 100 people, just that intimacy that you just can't get. I've played big rooms, and I'm sure you have too. And I think the biggest crowd I ever played to was about 1,500. And nowhere near as much fun. It's more nerve-wracking when you're in a little group, because
actually, yeah,
because you can see everybody when you're on stage and you're playing to 1,000 people or something like that. You can't see anybody because the lights are in your eyes.
Yep.
So, well, good. So how many concerts did you do? 30 days. How many concerts in 30 days?
We played 17 concerts.
Wow.
And it was like libraries, art centers, churches, guitar societies, flute societies, different kind of venues all over. They were all shows, no background, and almost all fully acoustic, which is
that's
nice.
That's even better. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was our first tour without a PA, which was awesome for the trunk. And just for we were talking with some friends last night about, they're like, how do you tour? Just like, because they're in a pop soul band, and they're just like moving the gear every night, and we are like, well, this was the first time we didn't have to pull out speakers and a board, and so yeah, it's nice.
When I was doing weddings, I had a small amplifier and just everything fit into a bag, and then my guitar, and that was it. And friends of mine in bands, so they'd have to get there 3 hours early to set up. It's like my gigs were shorter, paid more money, and I didn't have to drag around nearly as much stuff. And I'm going, I win. Yeah, I always thought those big PA speakers were cool until I had to drag a pair up a set of stairs about this narrow. So anyway, that was funny. So now, when you perform, a lot of the music is do you do entirely original stuff, or do you do other stuff as well?
Yeah, it's like 95% original, and then a couple of the arrangements we play are our own arrangements too. So it's kind of like
this trip was we did all original, and then one piazzolla piece. We did an arrangement of a squallow.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So yeah, that's seems like that would be harder to sell from a business side of things to.
Sure. Well, it takes a long time, and we've been doing this 20 years, and I would say a good 10 years we've been really promoting and educating people about our own music and the stories that we tell about how we wrote it. And it takes a long time. And I think, yeah, sure, it's um, maybe for like your chamber music series type thing, people who have a certain model and it's very repertoire driven for the classics
Sure.
of classical music. Um, yeah, but I think we also, the venues we choose, maybe we could say it's a broader audience, people who are maybe just curious about art or adventurists, and even people with families who just want children to come and have, a calming experience. That's what I love about playing in libraries. It's just kind of open to everyone. And sometimes it can get chaotic, but I think it's worth it to be able to share our music in that way.
Well, I've often thought that if you were going to build an audience that way, that audience is going to be with you for a very long time. Once, I mean,
True.
it's one thing to go someplace and play Schubert or Mendelssohn, but when you go and you're playing your own stuff and you go back and they're coming back and they're coming back again,
Yes.
that's huge.
Yeah. There was a couple that we played in this cathedral, St. Mary's Cathedral of the Assumption. It's downtown San Francisco. It's very famous architecture. It's crazy structure. But this couple just showed up, and we were both like, why do we know you? And they're like, yeah, we saw you last year and outside of San Jose, and we've been following you the entire time. And
Wow.
I was kind of floored. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be because, you have people have fans, but I thought that was great. And they're, a younger couple, probably in their 20s. So it was really nice to just be surprised by people that were like, of course we came to your show because we didn't particularly invite them specifically. So, yeah.
That's cool though, uh, yeah, that you, I think it's hard for us in classical music to accept the fact that we might have a fan or two, other than friends and family, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Just regular folks.
Yeah, fandom is, yeah, that's a great topic. Fandom in classical music. How does it work? And can it be developed?
Yeah, and but I think I look at the singer-songwriters that I know, for example, and they do the same thing. I mean, they have email lists and they sell merchandise and give stuff away. One guy I know that gives away bumper stickers. He said, "I'll give you this if you promise to display it."
You're right.
Yep.
you know and so people go, yeah, okay, but I think that you spend time and you build a fan base, and you do everything that you need to do, including spending time after the show with people and chatting with them and
Yeah.
shaking their hands and such like that. They come back if they like the music, and if they like you, all of a sudden they're back, and I think it's so important. So now, a lot of what you do when you're on tour, you camp a lot, yes?
Yes. Yeah, you want to talk a little bit the camping? Is this
Sure. I
a
mean,
thing we've been doing?
yeah, I don't know. I guess being outside's kind of nice, and it's been doing it a lot of time trying to find a good place, that's not too much driving, but it can be really peaceful, to be outside and I don't know, sleeping's generally better. I don't know. Go to
Uh-huh.
bed when the sun goes down.
Well, I've followed you, through social media and see the photographs, and it is the question that I've had is, what does that do to the instruments?
Oh,
I know.
well, I don't usually take them out.
We keep them
Yeah.
completely buried, not only for temperature wise, but just because we don't want anybody to know we have gear. People are like, why don't you get out and jam at the campground? I'm like, no, absolutely not. There was a guy playing mandolin in the redwoods when we camped outside of San Francisco, and we kind of talked to him, and I was really tempted to be like, let's jam, but like, no, just keep it buried, keep it regulated as much as possible.
So yeah, I can see that. So, well, a few things that I wanted to get into real quickly. I played on again and off again in the flute guitar duo for 25 years. And I've played with many other musicians over the years, and I can tell you that um, number one, I love your tone as a flutist. I really love it, and I've set downwind from people whose tone wasn't that good. And I guess a little brutal when you when you're on the wrong end of that. So I really love the tone that you get when you play. And and Andrew, I love the sound of your guitar. What kind of a guitar are you playing?
Um,
I don't normally ask that question, but I
oh,
was really
sure.
kind of
I play a Richard Brunet.
oh,
Yeah,
it really records well. It's really a pretty guitar. Sounds has
yeah.
very nice, very clear tones, and just it's a nice instrument. So I like that a lot. So um, I guess I wanted to talk also about your composing style. Have you taken lessons, or is this something that you're kind of self-taught at? How's
Well,
that worked out?
I've been writing music for a long time. I went to school for it.
Ah,
My undergraduate degree, I studied composition and guitar, and my master's, I studied just composing.
okay.
And that was 20 years ago I graduated and been doing it since. I've been teaching some composition too, so I mean I studied, I learned my things, and then it's just like I don't know, in graduate school my teacher and I did this little study on trying to figure out what makes a composer's style.
Uh-huh.
What makes Stravinsky sound like Stravinsky or something. And in the end, after listening to a lot of music and talking, it's there was no answer. It's just like who they are and what they've become. And maybe one of my other teachers told me like that, like being a composer is like you got to make a hit. It doesn't necessarily mean like a popular hit, but like an idea that you come up with that you think's really cool and unique. And then you keep working on that for many, many, many years in different pieces, in different forms. And I guess that kind of, I guess, forms your music. Yeah.
I know. One of my teaching idols has always been Nadia Boulanger, and I really regret that I never had the opportunity to meet that woman.
Mm.
But I know reading the stories about her working with Astor Piazzolla, and you mentioned him,
Mhm.
and he was struggling because it seemed like everything was trying to write was tangos, and he was trying to write more European style, and she just said, "No, write tangos. That's who you are." I always thought the honesty was the best policy in that regard. Just kind of write what you feel and who you are.
Sure, and I think maybe being a
Yeah.
good listener is important. You listen to, well, you got to listen to the music that you're writing, but also listening to what's around you and being
Uh,
aware. And if you notice things and listen to things, then it might start talking back to you.
how much do you think about Carmen when you're writing a piece? I
Oh,
mean,
sure. I've written
because
a lot. I've written a lot of flute music
uh-huh.
over the years and worked a lot with Carmen too. Especially when we were younger in graduate school, it's always like trying to push the edge of something, like how extreme. And then after a while, it's like like the upper register of the flute's kind of intense and strong, and the guitar's kind of mellow and quiet. So maybe you don't need to do that all the time. And so it's kind of a back and forth situation. I think it's harder for Carmen to write for guitar. That's really hard. If you don't play guitar, that's tricky.
Yeah, that's been the a common complaint for a century now. Is
Hmm.
uh, Segovia used to complain about that about people who didn't play guitar who were trying to write music for the guitar, and it was not a good exercise, generally speaking.
Yeah.
So Carmen, how did you adapt? I mean, how did that work out for you, writing for
Yeah.
guitar?
Well, my process started for a long time. I wrote, piano music that I tried to adapt for guitar, and that
Sure.
had pretty varying success results and complaints. Um, and then more recently, and then I got to learn to play guitar. So I learned for real. I did exercises. I learned a few Leo Brouwer etudes. I
Wow.
also taught kids music for a little while, early childhood, and so learned a bunch of songs and chords, and that was incredibly helpful just to know a little bit of the physicality because I had played no guitar before I met Andrew. I
Uh-huh.
grew up playing, my first instrument was piano, so
Okay.
but now I use basically kind of like an overhead transparency chart that I can write on
Oh,
and make shapes
It's of the
and
guitar neck.
of the guitar neck, yeah.
Yeah.
Of the fret, it's a fretboard,
yeah.
and I guess I could just say I'm a fretboard composer now. And I try to do my best, and think, I study a lot of scores too, so that I can somehow, because obviously I can't navigate the shapes. That's what's so frustrating. I understand like where they are and how to find them, but how to like flow between them and make ideas, it's so challenging, especially on a higher level. So just like studying a lot of scores, and then I've got my fretboard, and then somehow that space in between those two, I can fill in with ideas and that at least make sense, that aren't just ridiculous like it used to be. Now,
Well, we help
yeah,
each other.
yeah, and Andrew can help me, helps me a
We
lot.
revise a lot our
Yeah,
compositions, both of us. So, after some point, you got to be like, oh, people would always ask me, they'd say, oh, why do you make it so hard on yourself? You write such difficult music. And I said, well, that's not the same me. Like the composer me and the guitar player me are different. The composer me was like, no, this is the way it's got to go. This is the way the song goes. But the guitar me's got to figure out, how to work together on that, to make it flow and not be, there's things you can do on the guitar. I could do it. That's what I would tell Carmen over the years. I can do that, but it's not gonna be that.
It's
what,
not going to be very musical.
How do you make it graceful or
yeah,
something? It's just like too hard. Like, but how can we take that idea and make it something that could flow?
yeah, it's just about musical solutions.
Yeah.
Really, like what's a better musical solution to an idea?
Yeah, I've run into pieces. It's that same thing where the you can play this chord, you can play that chord, but you try to get from one to the other without it sounding like a train wreck. Uh,
Yeah,
you know, and you get so caught up in just the physicality of making the music that you don't really get a chance to make music. Now it's just a finger exercise. And of course you have to make the face. So now, do you commission works from other people?
no, it's something we haven't done. We're just always writing, writing, writing. We have so many pieces actually, that even
Even
in our
better.
backlog right now, that well, I think it's also being a performer composer, where you're like, okay, I wrote all this stuff, and you're like, oh man, now I gotta learn to play it, and just playing it is different too than I think kind of mastering it or seeing what sort of soul it's gonna have over, this last tour, 17 performances. You really learn what pieces are made of and the potential, and in a different way than you did when you first learned them. So that's interesting too.
Yeah, I think that when you perform, your playing changes, and if you play the same piece multiple times, the intimacy between you and that work starts giving you an insight that you didn't have, even though you wrote it.
Yeah,
You don't have that insight. Suddenly you're surprised and you go, "Well, this is kind of a cool line. I don't remember writing this, but it's kind of neat."
yeah. And then I'm always like, I think I wrote that one.
Yeah.
Some pieces we write together, and I was like, I thought I wrote the chord changes to this. He's like, no, I did. But it doesn't
That's
matter.
that's funny. Well, we talked about some of the difficulties of going on tour and so on. What are some of the advantages of like being an independent? Because as an independent, as opposed to like a signed artist with a label or a management company, that's a completely different approach to the biz.
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. I mean, that's kind of how our tagline, we're promoting being independent and sort of, we say, breathing new life into classical music. And I think a lot of the advantage is really having, I think, both the time and space. I mean, you have to be patient, but time and space to develop your own ideas in a way that doesn't have to have results. I mean, it does eventually, some kind of results. You can
Sure.
keep doing it, but you're just allowed to go down different roads, I think. You're also allowed to do things that are, I think, kind of astounding. I mean, I actually think you asked about the camping thing. I think people are always like jaw dropping, like, how do you even get dressed for a show? And I've been somewhat conflicted about it, honestly. Like, why are we still doing this? But there's so many benefits to doing it. We actually are. I was telling Andrew on the tour, it's like we actually get to go, and it recharges our batteries. Just being outside is
Uh-huh.
incredible, just like for your health and for understanding. Like, so much of our music is written about nature, and that's authentic. We're not just like watching nature shows or going on, I don't know, prescribed hikes
You're
that,
actually out there slapping mosquitoes.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. There's a lot of adversity to it, but it also builds, character and depth. And um, I think also the camping thing is interesting because it is building an audience base that I wouldn't have expected. People that are really appreciative of, maybe we could say, a certain authenticity and
Uh-huh.
sense of adventure that I wouldn't have expected in, classical music audience, you know. So I think it ends up being this really interesting thing that we keep doing just because it's so attractive to our audience members and so enriching for our music and our life. And
Well, I think
yeah.
it's interesting doing original stuff because I think there's a certain segment of the population that when you start mentioning Beethoven or Mendelssohn or something like that, they're afraid. It scares them, you know.
Sure.
We're going to play a piece by Bach, and oh, you know, and they start to squirm in their chair before you ever play the first note, and coming out there and saying, "This is a song that we wrote about blah blah blah," and now all of a sudden that's more singer-songwriter to them.
Yeah.
I think it's just more, the music may be every bit as intricate, maybe even more so, but in their mind, it's somehow more accessible, I think. So,
Yeah. What do you think about independent?
Well, I mean, I
Yeah,
think as far
benefits.
as the independent thing, there's so many tools now that are accessible to everyone
uh-huh.
for ways of connecting to people and making things happen. I mean, I don't know. Sure, doing a lot of internet research, finding places to play, contacting people takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And some might say, oh, I could be practicing instead or writing music, and then I could pay someone else to do that. But then it's kind of out of your control. We're allowing ourselves to follow our creative paths always, saying, this is our show. We're playing like this. We're going to go to these places. And you have to kind of live with what happens. Like as far as like putting a tour together, the order of the shows, it's really hard to get it to be like, okay, everybody, we're going to connect all 17 of these dots in the easiest route. Less driving. It doesn't work like that. It's like someone says, oh, you want to come play in this town, which is 4 hours the other way, and you could say, well, no, it's bad for the driving. Or you could say, yes, no, yeah, I want to play a show. So let's drive over there and play a show. And then things end up not, and you got to kind of, if it's yourself that made it, you have to accept, what you
There's
did.
no one to
Yeah,
blame. Is that a pro or a con?
yeah, I don't
There's no
know.
one
I
to
mean,
blame.
Rats.
you could be next year we're gonna make this better, but at least it's like it's yourself that got you there, and somehow, like Carmen was saying, there's some kind of authenticity to that, or like being the singer songwriter. Like here I am, I wrote the song. This is my name. This is the next song. It's not like, oh, there was this great person so long ago that, did this thing, and you all know his name, so maybe you might feel a little better now because you recognize this song on the program, and now we're gonna play this song, or maybe like you were saying, like it might turn somebody off, like oh, Bach and Schubert and all that might make someone feel threatened because they don't know.
That's true. So, well, you did 17 shows in this last tour. How many tours do you do in a year?
Well, we do a big one in the summer. We've been doing that for probably 15 years.
What
Well,
is what is
15
big?
years. Um, 20 to 40 shows. We used to do
Wow.
humongous ones. We'd fill in. We used to play tango music, so it was like half tango dances, half concerts,
Okay.
which is kind of insane. and now we only do concerts. We kind of felt like, well, especially after COVID, like let's decide to focus on one or the other. So just doing concerts. But then we do like two other mini ones in the year. Like we did a spring one in February, kind of a spring break tour that was like 4 or 5 shows. And then we usually do a fall one more regionally. So our goal is to have a 3 set touring, so 3 chunks that are like a month long eventually.
So
That's
you're
kind of the
looking at
ultimate.
what, like maybe 50, 60 shows a year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's a pretty healthy load right there.
yeah.
I don't
It's
think people
good.
realize just what you know, there's a lot of pros out there that don't do more than 25 or 30 a year. So
Hmm.
so yeah, that's pretty substantial. So how is your act and your writing and all of that kind of stuff? How has that evolved over the last 20 years?
I don't know. What do you think?
Evolved.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at your business for a second. How has your business evolved? I mean, I'm sure you're busier than
Sure.
you were 20 years ago when you're first starting out.
Yeah. Well, it there's an interesting continuity. I feel like more or less, well, because it's been just me and Andrew mostly, especially for our concert format, we've been kind of doing just this. I mean, this sounds funny, the same thing in terms of our show. We
Uh-huh.
go and we tell stories and we write music and kind of just keeps, making it better, making the stories better, making the compositions better. Our playing is better.
Yeah, but as far as
The
the
business
business changed.
wise,
We
yeah,
became we're an LLC
yeah, we,
like 5, 6 years ago or something.
Okay.
We teach lessons out of our house. I used to teach, and both of us taught through Grand Rapids Community College had an arts outreach program, and we did
Uh-huh.
that for many years, and they canceled the program, and so we've had a few students, and I was like, well, just come to my house, and we can have lessons there, and that's kind of been growing. So we've been developing our own the Folias Music School, and I guess it's like as far as performances go, and maybe even compositions, it's just like let's try to make each round a little better.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes sense. So, a couple of other odds and ends. I'm listening to your music on YouTube, which is always a treat. I enjoy listening to you play. You Number one, you play well together. You play well together as a team, and that's not always the case in chamber music. Sometimes it's so patched together that you don't get the balance that you need. So you guys play off each other quite well. Um, and the music that you write, I really enjoy that. That's all pretty much nature inspired, as I think you said that. And so then you have a CD called Heart Dance? Is that, am I,
yes, yep.
when did that come out?
That came out May of 2023.
Oh, so that's new.
So
Okay.
yeah, still new. I mean, for
Still.
classical music, it's really new.
Fresh.
Like this is brand new.
Well, yeah, in
Barely
classical
even.
music, the only good composer is a dead composer.
Yeah, I know. We should
Yeah.
call it new the rest of our life.
No, I'll be a not good composer for as long as possible under those terms.
Fair enough. So,
Yeah,
so
but
s- is it doing well?
yeah, very well. Yeah, it was our 20-year anniversary album.
Oh, how
So we
nice.
thought let's kind of make this a big splash. And the feature piece on the album is really Andrew's kind of tour de force piece, all about the life cycle of the dragonfly.
Yeah.
That's the first 4 tracks on the
Okay.
album. And we've been featuring that on tours for a while, and different, like this last round, we did a couple movements from it. And um, yeah, the
Well,
album, it was really, really great reception
was
on it.
one of the movements from that, is that the one that you were playing a tambin? Is that
Yeah, yeah.
okay? Talk
Tam,
to me about that because that kind of caught me by surprise.
Yeah, that is an African flute from
Okay.
Guinea, and it's a three-holed flute, so you produce all the rest of the tones kind of like you would on a trumpet with the overtone series.
Uh-huh.
And I got that on a research trip through Aquinas College when I went with a group to Guinea,
It's
and
cool.
I studied with the principal flutist of Les Ballets Africains, and it's his
Wow.
flute that he made. And when I brought it back, I was just super excited about it. And it took about a decade, but we figured out how to write for it. And Andrew figured out how to, um, with a capo, because it's kind of based in F minor
Oh,
with an out of tune D flat. And it's not Western European tuning or anything. And
right.
there's some notes that are missing. And so you have to kind of figure out how to make, compose with this. It was really interesting. It has a really great sound. It's a really nice for concert setting because it's just a different timbre. And
It's a
I
beautiful
also,
sounding instrument. I
yeah,
just thought it was really nice, but I was just
yeah,
like, scratching my head and going, "What was that?" But I mean, I love the sound of it. I made a note of it. So I got to ask. I got to ask.
yeah.
So upcoming projects, what you got going on?
We're gonna finish off. We have a couple more performances on the East Coast that we're gonna do next month.
Okay.
And then we are doing a composing cabin residency in three different cabins.
Oh,
One in on the Hudson in New York, one in Maryland, and one in Virginia. And that's where we're gonna write the next round of music.
wow. It sounds like fun. So what is that? They just, kind of give you some space and let you write
Oh,
or
well, yeah, I think that they're all through state park systems,
uh-huh.
and it's
We started booking our own
we just
because
paid for it.
we used to do official ones. We actually apply for different ones every year in the national parks, but they're so difficult to get now. Like hundreds of people, um, sign up to do these, and we're like, we can book our own residencies and have us be inspired by this place, and yeah,
So now
Folias Music residency.
are your tours listed on your website?
Oh
Yes,
yeah.
yep.
Okay, so people
Foliasmusic.com/events.
okay, so folks can go there and find that, and they can find Heart Dance
Yeah.
and all the cool stuff. So, well, believe it or not, we are all out of time, and I'm
Ooh,
so
that was
grateful
fast.
for you that you said that you would do this. So thank you very much. I'll say goodbye now. See ya.
Yeah. Thanks for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having us.
Thank you for spending time with us. It's really appreciated. If you or someone you know is an aspiring guitarist or ukulele player, please go to my website, www.rogerhumphrey.com. There's a lot of stuff there that you might find interesting, and some of it is free. You don't have to even subscribe. Just go in and grab what you want. But it would be nice if you did subscribe. That would help a lot. Thank you again. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon on Creative Conversations with Roger Humphrey.